My son told me, "Dad, you have nothing to offer this family anymore." So I silently canceled the monthly payments into his bank account. My son is 36 years old, college educated, good job, nice house in a suburb of Columbus, Ohio. Wife, 2 kids, newer cars in the driveway. By most measurements, he is doing fine. He told me I had nothing to offer this family anymore on a Saturday afternoon in April while his wife stood in the kitchen doorway and said nothing. I drove 185 miles home without a word about it. Then I canceled the $800 I'd been putting in his bank account every month for 6 years. And I waited. Welcome to Father's Storytelling. Get comfortable. This one builds slow and lands hard. Drop a comment, hit the like button, make sure you're subscribed. You are going to want to be here for all of it. Here. Let me back up. My name is Ray Callahan. I'm 64 years old. I spent 35 years as a union electrician in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I have the knees to prove it. I drive a 2016 Ram 1500 with 112,000 miles on it, and I plan to drive it to 200. I take my coffee at 5:30 in the morning, at the kitchen table, before the day starts deciding things for me. I am not a complicated man. I am not a dramatic one. I learned early that the most important things a man does, he does without announcing them. And the most important things he provides without keeping score. My father taught me that. His father before him. You build, you provide, you show up. You don't make a speech about it. Donna understood that about me before I understood it about myself. Donna Callahan, 58 years old when she died, which is younger than anyone should go. We had 34 years together, she and I, and those 34 years are the only credential that matters to me. More than the union card, more than the master electrician's license, more than anything I ever built or wired from the ground up. She was from Bethlehem originally. I met her at a St. Patrick's Day party in 1986 that her cousin dragged her to, and that I almost didn't go to because I had an early shift. I thank God for that shift, because the inconvenience of it is the reason I got there early enough to be standing near the door when she walked in. Donna was the kind of woman who remembered every birthday without anyone reminding her. Who kept a list in the kitchen drawer of what every person she loved preferred for breakfast, because she wanted anyone who sat at her table to feel specifically seen, not generally fed. Who drove 40 minutes each way to take her mother to bingo every Thursday for 11 years because her mother loved bingo and Donna loved her mother. She was also the one who handled the money when I couldn't see straight about it. When the union went on strike for 6 weeks in 2004 and our savings were getting lean, she picked up extra shifts at the pharmacy where she already worked part-time without telling me until we were through it. Not deception, consideration. She didn't want me carrying the weight of knowing while I was already carrying everything else. That's who she was. Donna didn't love loudly. She loved specifically, consistently, at cost, and without keeping count. 3 years ago, February, she had a stroke on a Tuesday morning while I was at the hardware store picking up weather stripping. She was gone before the paramedics arrived. I got the call standing in aisle 7 holding a $12 package of foam tape, and I have never once been back to that store. 34 years of her. 4 minutes to lose her. We have 2 children. Derek is 36. Angela is 39. They are different from each other in the way that children from the same house can somehow become completely different people. I don't say that as a complaint. I say it as something I've had 3 years to think about and have finally come to understand fully. After Donna passed, I did a practical thing. She had a life insurance policy, $250,000, that she had kept current for 22 years because that was the kind of woman she was, always thinking past herself. I took that money and did 3 things with it. I paid off the remaining balance on the house on Clearfield Street because Donna cared about that house and I wasn't going to let her passing be the reason it was still owed on. I set up college accounts for each of the 4 grandchildren, 2 of Derek's, 2 of Angela's, $12,000 each to start, with a monthly contribution going in automatically. And I set up a monthly transfer, $800, into Derek's checking account, not Angela's. I'll explain that in a moment. Derek and Brittany had been financially stretched for a few years by that point. I knew this the way fathers know things, not because Derek told me directly, but because I could read what he didn't say. The house they'd bought at the top of what they could afford, the cars that were nicer than they needed to be, the way certain conversations about money ended just slightly too quickly. Donna had noticed too, before she passed. She mentioned it once, quietly, the way she mentioned things that worried her, so I set up the transfer. $800 a month. I told Derek once, directly, I want to help while I'm still here to do it. Your mother would have wanted this. He said thanks, Dad, and then he never mentioned it again. For 6 years, not once in 6 years did Derek call to say thank you for this month, or ask if I could afford it, or offer to pay it back when things got easier, or even acknowledge it the way something ongoing and significant should be acknowledged. I told myself that was fine, that he was busy, that he and Brittany had a full life, that gratitude doesn't always come packaged the way you expect it. I told myself a lot of things for 6 years. Now, about Angela Callahan, Angela Russo now, 12 years married to a good man named Pete, lives 22 minutes from my house in Pittsburgh. She calls me every Sunday at 10 in the morning, not most Sundays, every Sunday. In 3 years, she has missed twice. Once when she was in the hospital with a kidney stone and called me from the hospital bed to apologize for missing it, and once during a family vacation when she texted to say she'd call in the afternoon and then called in the afternoon. After Donna passed, Angela drove to my house the next morning with food. Not flowers, food. Enough for a week, because she knew I wouldn't cook and she knew flowers didn't solve that. She came back the following Sunday and the Sunday after that, and she has been coming back ever since. The reason I didn't set up a monthly transfer for Angela is simple. When I offered, she told me no, in a way that made further offering feel impolite. "Dad," she said, "I appreciate it more than you know, but Pete and I are good. Give it to someone who needs it." She meant Derek, and I knew she meant Derek, and I told her I would. I didn't set up the transfer because I loved Derek more than Angela. I set it up because he needed it, and she refused it, and because that's what you do. Now, the Saturday in April. The drive to Columbus was 185 miles. 3 hours and 12 minutes door to door. Derek had called on a Wednesday and said they were doing some work around the house that weekend, getting things sorted for spring, and if I wanted to come down and see the kids, I was welcome. I said I'd be there Saturday morning. I loaded my toolbox in the truck bed before I left, which I do automatically, the way I do most things, without thinking, because the thinking was done so long ago it became reflex. I have been fixing things my entire adult life. I show up with the tools because something always needs doing, and being the person who can do it is not a burden. It is a point of pride. I arrived at 9:15. Jack and Lily were at their Saturday morning activities. Derek was moving through the house with the energy of someone whose weekend was already planned and slightly crowded. Brittany was somewhere between pleasant and elsewhere. I spotted the bathroom issue within the first 20 minutes. Not looking for it. I was walking past and glanced in. The caulking around the tub base was coming up in 2 places, and the drain plate was sitting slightly crooked in a way that meant it had been unscrewed and replaced by someone who didn't know to seat it properly. I mentioned it to Derek casually. His tub caulking was going. I could reseal it before lunch, had everything in the truck. Brittany, from the kitchen. "Oh, we're fine, Ray. We have a contractor coming Monday to look at a few things." I said it was a 20-minute job. No reason to pay someone for it. Derek looked at me with an expression I didn't have a name for in that moment, but have since identified. It's the expression of a man who is performing for his wife, who is saying something to you but angling it in her direction. "Dad, we don't need you fixing things. We've got it handled." I said I knew they had it handled. I was just offering. I noticed the electrical panel on the way back through the hallway. An older box, original to the house. There was a breaker that had been tripped and reset multiple times. I could see the wear on it from 6 feet away, because I have been reading panels for 35 years. I mentioned it, not making a production of it, just, "Hey, you might want someone to look at that breaker." Derek turned around from whatever he was doing, and then he said it. "Dad, honestly, you have nothing to offer this family anymore. We have real professionals we can call for things. Just come in and have lunch. I want to tell you about that moment precisely." The house was quiet except for the refrigerator hum and something playing low on a speaker in the other room. Brittany was in the kitchen doorway, and I registered, without looking directly at her, that she was completely still. Not shocked, still. The stillness of someone watching a thing they've been expecting to see. Derek was looking at me with something that might have been impatience, might have been embarrassment, might have been a thing he'd been building toward for a while without knowing it. And I was standing in my son's hallway with 35 years of a union electrician's hands and a toolbox in my truck that I'd loaded automatically, because showing up with the ability to help is who I am. Nothing to offer this family anymore. I nodded once, went in and had lunch, sat at the table and made appropriate conversation. Ate the food that was offered, asked about the kids' activities, listened to Brittany talk about a backyard renovation they were planning. Jack got home at 1:15. He came through the door with mud on his cleats and his shin guards still on, and he saw me and said pop pop and came across that kitchen at full 8-year-old speed and hit me in the midsection. I caught him, lifted him, held him for a moment longer than necessary. That was the best part of the day. Lily came in an hour later still wearing a paper crown she'd made at art class. She climbed into my lap at the kitchen table and showed me a drawing she'd done of what she said was our family. She pointed to a tall figure with gray hair. "That's you, Pop-Pop. You're the biggest one." I told her that was good work. I left at 4. Derek walked me to the truck. He looked the way men look when they've said something that sat wrong and haven't decided yet whether to address it. He didn't address it. He said, "Drive safe, Dad." I said I would. He went back inside. I drove 185 miles home. It's a long drive at 64 when something is sitting on your chest. I didn't turn on the radio. I wanted the road and the silence and the 3 hours and 12 minutes to just exist. I turned over what Derek said from every angle I could find, the way I've been taught to look at things, and I could not find a single angle from which it was anything other than exactly what it sounded like. Nothing to offer this family anymore. Not you're overstepping. Not we've got it handled, Dad. Not even a gentle I appreciate it, but we're good. Nothing to offer. A full accounting. A verdict. Delivered in front of his wife, who stood in the doorway and did not find it surprising. The word anymore was the one that stayed with me. Nothing to offer this family anymore. Anymore implies a before. A time when I did have something to offer. Which means Derek knows, somewhere in himself, that I used to matter. He's just decided that time has passed. I got home at 8:15. Sat in the truck in the driveway for a few minutes. Went inside, poured a glass of water, sat at Donna's kitchen table under the light she picked out at a hardware store in 2009, the one I have never once considered changing. And I did what I do when I need to think clearly. I took out a piece of paper, and I wrote down what I knew. If you've been with us for a while and haven't subscribed yet, this is a good moment to do it. Hit that button. Hit the like. Leave a comment. These stories keep going because of you. Here is what I wrote down. 6 years. $800 a month. 12 college fund contributions across 4 grandchildren, 185 miles each way, 30-some trips, 4 of which were canceled after I'd already driven down, 11 times seeing the grandkids in 3 years, every birthday call I made, every Christmas I showed up for, every offer of help that required driving hours and loading the truck and showing up at a door. I did not write those things as grievances. I wrote them as facts. Facts about what had been flowing in one direction for 6 years and what had been flowing back. Let me be honest with myself, the way Donna would have wanted. Derek and Brittany had come to Pittsburgh twice in 3 years. Once for Donna's funeral, which I don't count because grief is not a visit. Once for Christmas that lasted 18 hours because Brittany had plans for the following morning. In 3 years, Derek had called on my birthday once. I know this not because I was keeping a tally, but because I remember the calls that surprised me. The one that came was in year 2, early, 9 in the morning before I was out of the house, and I sat down on the stairs because of how good it felt to be remembered. That's the part that tells you something. When a call from your own son surprises you enough to make you sit down on the stairs. The money. Not once in 6 years had Derek acknowledged the transfer in any sustained way. He said thank you the day I set it up, and then it joined the wallpaper of his life, the way things you haven't earned tend to do. He never asked if I needed to stop it. Never offered any version of, I want to pay this back someday. Never called to say, Dad, I want you to know what this means to us. I am not a man who needs to be thanked for everything. I grew up in a house where you did what needed doing without waiting for someone to notice. But I know the difference between someone who doesn't thank you because gratitude is expressed differently in them and someone who doesn't thank you because what they're receiving has simply become expected. Donna had a name for this. Quiet depletion, she called it. When something is taken in amounts that feel reasonable individually but add up over time to something significant. She said the problem is that the person doing the taking sometimes doesn't know they're doing it. That they've adjusted to a supply and stopped noticing there's someone maintaining it. I think that was true of Derek. I want to be fair about that. I don't think he woke up every morning and consciously decided to take his father for granted. I think he woke up and didn't think about his father much at all, and that the $800 appeared on the 15th of every month and sat alongside everything else that simply existed in his life. And I think Brittany knew exactly what the money was and where it came from, and had long since filed it under a feature of her marriage that she did not intend to question. The nothing to offer part had her fingerprints on it. That's not me being uncharitable. That's me, after 34 years of Donna and 35 years of reading rooms professionally, knowing what a man sounds like when he's delivering someone else's conclusion. Derek is not cruel by nature. He is a man who loves his wife and has, over years and without any dramatic moment, allowed her reading of the world to gradually replace his own. I watched it happen the way you watch weather move in. Nothing sudden, just the slow dimming of light. I finished the paper, folded it, put it in the kitchen drawer under the counter where I keep things that matter and don't need to be looked at constantly. Then I went to bed. The next morning, 5:30. Coffee at the table, light coming over the Clearfield Street oak tree the way it always does in spring, the way it was doing the morning after Donna died, the way it will be doing long after I'm gone. I made 2 calls before 8. The first was to my bank, canceled the monthly transfer to Derek's account. No drama, no letter, no explanation delivered, just canceled. The second was to my financial advisor, Patricia Huang, who has handled my accounts since 2016, and who I trust the way I trust a good level. Absolutely, and without having to think about it. I told her I wanted to redirect $800 a month, away from where it had been going, into Angela's kids' college accounts, split evenly, on top of what was already going in. She asked one necessary question. Are you sure about the grandchildren's accounts? The ones for Derek's kids? I thought about Jack hitting me at full speed across that kitchen. Lily's paper crown, the biggest one. The college accounts for Jack and Lily were not what I wanted to reconsider. Those were for the kids. The kids had said nothing. I closed the automatic monthly contributions. The principal I'd put in stayed, because that money belonged to them. The ongoing giving stopped. That felt right. The kids are 8 and 5. None of this was theirs to carry. I made a third call that afternoon, to Robert Gallagher, who handles my estate planning and has for 12 years. Told him I needed to review my will. He asked when I'd like to come in. I said tomorrow. Now I need to tell you about Angela, because she's a central part of this story and because she deserves to be told. I drove to her house that Sunday. She was in the backyard when I pulled up, working in the garden she and Pete have been building for 3 years in the back corner of their yard. Tomatoes, herbs, flowers that Donna would have recognized, because Angela had asked me what her mother used to plant and then planted them herself. I watched her through the fence for a moment before she saw me. That's love. Right there in a back garden. That's what it looks like when it's in motion. She came through the gate and hugged me the way she always does, properly, both arms, meaning it. I told her what Derek said, word for word. I am not a man who softens things, and Angela is not a woman who needs them softened. She went very still. He said what? I repeated it. She looked at me for a long moment. Her mother's eyes, the exact color, the exact directness. Dad. Just my name. The way people say just your name when they don't trust themselves to say more than that. I know, I said. She shook her head slowly. Not in disbelief. She believed it. I could see that she believed it immediately, but in something closer to grief. The specific grief of finally hearing out loud a thing you've been sensing for a long time. She asked what I was going to do. I told her what I'd done. She was quiet. Then, the accounts for Jack and Lily? Those stay, I said. The kids didn't say anything. She nodded once. Then she said, Dad, you know you have more to offer any room you walk into than most people I've ever met. I know, I said. That's not actually the issue anymore. She understood exactly what I meant. Angela always does. We had dinner with her family that evening. Pete, their 2 kids, Emma and Marcus, 12 and 9. Emma asked me about the old houses on Clearfield Street. She'd been interested since a school project on Pittsburgh architecture. I told her everything I knew, which was considerable, because I had wired 3 of those houses and lived on that block for 27 years. She listened with a pen and a notebook. Donna would have loved that so much it would have made her cry. I drove home at 9 feeling, if not light exactly, then clear. The way a room feels when you finally fix the wiring and the lights come on right. May passed without a word from Derek about. I want to be specific about that because it matters. Not a question, not a text, not a casual mention. May came and went in complete silence on the subject of the missing $800. June the same. I want to tell you what my life looked like in those 2 months, because it's important. I got up at 5:30, had my coffee, worked in the garage Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I take small electrical jobs now, not for the money, but because I am not a man built for sitting still, and keeping my hands in it keeps me honest. Wednesday afternoons I drove Angela's kids to their activities when Pete was traveling, which he does frequently, because Angela asked once if I'd help and I said of course, and now it's just what we do on Wednesdays. Friday mornings I had breakfast at a place on Penn Avenue with 3 men I've known since the 80s, Jimmy, Carl, and a man we call Stretch, for reasons that made sense in 1987. Sunday mornings Angela called at 10. I was not sitting by the phone waiting for Derek to notice. I was not staring at my bank account watching the outgoing transfer that no longer happened. I was not rehearsing what I would say. I was living my life, the life Donna and I built together, that I was continuing to build in her absence. The $800 that wasn't going to Columbus anymore went to Emma's college account, and to Marcus's. And I added a little extra to Jack and Lily's accounts directly, because they were 8 and 5, and they called me Pop Pop, and none of this was their doing. Derek called on a Tuesday in early July. The call was casual. Too casual. The specific casualness of a man who has been rehearsing casualness. He asked about my knee, asked about the Friday breakfast, mentioned something Jack had done at soccer camp. Standard. Then, at the natural end of the conversation, in the slightly too offhand way of a man who had been waiting for the right moment. "Hey Dad, I think there might be some issue with your bank account. Haven't seen that transfer come through in a couple months. Everything okay on your end?" I waited one beat. "Everything's fine," I said. "I made some adjustments." Oh. A pause. "Okay. What kind of adjustments?" "Just redirected some things. Nothing for you to worry about." Another pause. Longer. "Okay." He recovered. "Just wanted to make sure everything was good on your end." "Everything's good," I said. We finished the call. He didn't push further. August arrived. No transfer. Derek called twice, both times with the same surface-level check-in, both times drifting toward finances without quite landing on the subject directly. I said the same thing both times, made some adjustments. Everything's fine. Then Brittany called. I want to describe this accurately. She called on a Thursday evening, asked how I was doing, in the way that questions can be both sincere and purposeful simultaneously. Then, "Ray, Derek mentioned you'd made some changes to your accounts. I just wanted to make sure everything was okay on your end. Sometimes people your age—" She stopped herself, smart enough to hear where that sentence was going. "What I mean is," she continued, "if there's something going on with you financially, we want to know. We're family." I let that word sit in the air for a moment. "We're family," I said. "I appreciate the call, Brittany. Everything is fine. I've redirected some things to where they're more useful." She was quiet. "Can I ask what you mean by that?" "I mean I made some adjustments," I said. "Nothing you need to worry about." Her voice shifted, became more direct, because Brittany, when she is being direct, is at least being honest about what the conversation is. "Ray, has Derek done something to upset you? Because if this is about his comment in April," she knew about April. She called it his comment, which meant she was aware of what he'd said and had processed it as a known quantity. I said, "Brittany, my financial decisions are mine to make. I haven't asked Derek for anything. I don't owe an explanation for how I allocate my own money." A pause. "The $800 a month helped us a lot, Ray." "I know," I said. "We were counting on it. There it was. Not it meant a lot to us, not we were so grateful for it. We were counting on it." The specific language of a person who had built something into their math that wasn't theirs to build in. I said, "I know. I'm sorry for any disruption. Can we talk about this?" "Maybe if you came down," I said. "I don't think there's anything to talk about. But I'll tell you this, Brittany. If Derek has something he wants to say to me, I'm available. He knows where I am. Completely even. Not cold. I was not going to give her the satisfaction of cold. Even the way I am on a job site when something isn't right and I need to address it without making it dramatic. Because drama doesn't fix anything. Precision does." We hung up. I sat at Donna's kitchen table under her light and I thought about those 3 words. We were counting on it. $800 a month for 6 years, and she had been counting on it the way you count on a utility, like electricity, the thing that runs through the walls and powers the house, and that you only think about when it stops. I thought about what Donna would say. I knew exactly what Donna would say. She would set down her coffee and look at me with those eyes, and say, "Ray, a man who provides for his children is a gift. A man who gets treated like a utility is something else entirely. And I would not have my husband treated like a utility by someone who doesn't understand what it costs to keep the lights on." Derek came to Pittsburgh on a Friday in September. He came alone. He texted the night before to ask if he could come. I told him yes and that I'd have food. Because whatever needed to be said, it would be said at a table with something to eat. That is non-negotiable in a house I own. I made pot roast. The same one Donna taught me in our 2nd year of marriage, standing behind me at the stove, with her hands over mine on the pot, patient as anything. I set the table. I did not light the candles, not because I was being cold, but because candles are for celebration or comfort, and I didn't know yet which this was going to be. Derek arrived at 6. He looked like a man who had driven almost 3 hours to have a conversation he didn't know how to start. He looked like my son, which he is and will always be, and I want to be clear about that even inside everything else I need to say. He looked like he hadn't been sleeping well. We sat down, we ate. I let the meal do what a meal does, which is occupy the hands and create the kind of ordinary rhythm that makes harder things slightly easier to approach. Halfway through, Derek set down his fork. "Dad, I need to talk about the transfers." "All right," I said. He looked at the table, then at me. I know they stopped. I know it was after April. And I know, he stopped, started again. I know I said something that day, something that came out wrong. I said, "Tell me what you meant by it." He looked at his hands. "I meant we don't need you fixing things around the house. That we have people for that." "I didn't mean—" "Derek," I said. "Don't tell me what you didn't mean. Tell me what you meant." He looked at me. I said, "You told me I had nothing to offer this family anymore. I need to know what you meant when you said anymore." The kitchen was quiet. The kind of quiet where the refrigerator and the clock and the ordinary sounds of a house become very audible because two people have stopped making any noise. Derek's jaw tightened slightly. He said, "I think I've been letting Brittany's—" He stopped. "I think I've been seeing things through her eyes for a while. About what help looks like. About what matters." I said, "And what does she think matters?" He looked at his hands again. I said, "Derek, she called me. Did you know that?" He looked up. "No." I told him what she said. We were counting on it. Something moved through his face. Not surprise exactly. The look of a man hearing something confirmed that he'd been telling himself wasn't true. I said, 6 years. 800 a month. Your mother's insurance money, Derek. The money your mother spent 22 years paying premiums on because she was thinking about you when she wouldn't be here anymore." He was very still. I said, "You're 36 years old. Good job, good house. 2 kids who are healthy and smart and who have a grandfather willing to drive 3 hours and 12 minutes to see them. I set up that transfer because you needed it and because that's what fathers do and because your mother would have wanted me to. I let that sit between us. I never asked for a thing back. Never asked for thanks. Never kept score. But I want to tell you something, son. A man can give without keeping score and still know the difference between a family that sees him and one that's learned to look past him." Derek's eyes had gone red at the corners. He was holding it together the way men are taught to hold it. I said, "You told me I had nothing to offer this family anymore. I drove home and I thought about it for 3 hours and 12 minutes, and then I made some adjustments. Because if what I have to give isn't useful to you, then it should go somewhere it is." A long silence. Derek said quietly, "Where did it go?" "Angela's kids," I said, and a little more into Jack and Lily's accounts directly, because the kids didn't say anything. The kids still call me Pop Pop. That's not something I was going to take from them over a conversation they weren't in the room for. Derek closed his eyes, opened them. He said, "Dad, I'm sorry." I looked at my son across that table, my face in his face, the way faces carry forward through the years. Donna's hands on him somewhere too, even if they don't look like hers. I said, "I know you are." And then I said the thing I'd driven 3 hours to say. I said, "Derek, I have been a lot of things in my life, wrong about things and right about things. Made decisions I'd make differently now. But I have never once, not one morning in 36 years, woken up and not been your father. That is not something available to be taken away. Not by you, not by anyone." He nodded. "Once, slowly." I said, "What I can be moved away from is a table where I'm not welcome, an offer that isn't received, a trip down to Columbus where I drive all day and come home feeling like furniture." He looked at me and held it. I said, "I don't need you to need me to fix your bathtub. I need you to be my son. That's the whole thing. That's all of it." We talked after that the way we used to talk, before the drift, before things tilted. He told me about a project at work he was proud of. I told him about the Friday breakfast and Jimmy's bad knee, and Stretch's new grandkid who came in weighing 9 pounds and apparently arrived looking like a sitting senator. Derek laughed. The real kind, not the company kind. I hadn't heard that laugh from him in a long time, and I sat with it for a moment while it was in the room. At 9 o'clock he stood up to go. He hugged me in the kitchen doorway, both arms, properly, the way he used to when he was young. I held on a moment longer than necessary. He said, "I'll call more." I said, "I know you will." He drove back to Columbus. I washed the pot roast dish, set it on the rack, turned off the kitchen light, walked through the house the way I do at the end of every night, checking that things are where they should be, that what I've built and maintained is still standing. The house on Clearfield Street, Donna's table, her light, her candles. I turned off the last light and stood in the hallway in the dark for a moment. I thought about nothing to offer, about what those words cost me to hear, what they cost Derek to say, and what it cost Brittany nothing at all to let him say them. And I thought about what Donna would tell me if she were here, standing in this hallway, in the house she loved. She would say, "You offered everything you had, Raymond. You never stopped. The question was never what you had to give. It was whether they'd be smart enough to understand what they were holding." Derek and I talk more now. He calls on Sundays sometimes. Not every Sunday, but sometimes, which is more than it was. He drove up 2 months ago for a weekend with the kids. Just him, no Brittany. Jack spent most of a Saturday morning in the garage with me, handing me tools with the focused seriousness of a boy who is learning that knowing how things work is power. Lily sat on the workbench and provided a running commentary on our work that had no technical value whatsoever and was the best thing I'd heard all year. The transfers have not restarted. I have not been asked to restart them, which tells me something. Whether it tells me Derek has sorted his own finances or that he's not ready to ask, I'm not entirely sure. Either answer is fine. What's mine to give, I give. I have always given it and I will continue to give it, in the direction of people who understand what it is. I'm in the garage most Tuesday mornings, keeping my hands in it the way a man should who knows how to build things and is not finished building them. My hands are not finished. I'm 64 years old, and I have a great deal left to offer. I just got more careful about who I offer it to. If this story meant something to you, join us by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories. Leave a comment. We read every one. Thank you for being part of Father's Storytelling. I'll see you on the next one.